guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today we're going to be talking about The Invisible Man.
So The Invisible Man is a film that I didn't know was actually going to ever come out, because I know the Dark Universe thing they were trying to do with the Mummy, and that pretty much spectacularly failed. But I really love the way they were able to salvage this franchise and this like classic character.
Yeah, it's a very dark, twisted, like horror movie, and it has those very unique horror elements that that we gravitate towards.
Yeah, and there's something about it. The proof of concept of The Invisible Man is something that has lasted the test of time. It's obviously that iconic film. I remember watching the black and white films when I was a kid, and I love how they put a modern take on it, and they use some of the elements that modern horror hasn't seen in a couple years. It had very Paranormal Activity-esque vibes.
Yes.
When it comes to that fear of the unknown and the unseeable.
It definitely has this very slight build up throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
There's also this very powerful and unique score behind it that also each time you hear it, you're like, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, it has a really good score, and like Noelle said, the tension is just excellent in this film. I think that's where it excels more than anything, because a lot of it is just you don't know where he is. You don't know what's going on with this invisible force, and that constant unnerving feeling is something that really just radiates from this movie. I think Elisabeth Moss, who plays Cecilia, did a really excellent job. There's an overarching theme going throughout this film about domestic violence. While it is a horror movie, it does hit home at some serious points.
Yeah, Elisabeth Moss really killed it in this performance. She just drew every emotion imaginable for this role. Like, you're definitely feeling her pain throughout the entire movie.
And she is able to portray this intense amount of dread and fear that's with her character. And it's not even about the fact that this guy's invisible and chasing her. It is that her husband was a monster, and she's terrified of this monster. And I think there's a way that it almost talks to how people are the monsters. You think of, Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Mummy, and the Invisible Man, but really the underlying thing of it is that, some people are just monsters.
Also thought Oliver Jack, who played Adrian in the movie, performed really well. He's not in it as much as you would think he's in it, but the scene where he's in it at the very end, I thought that was very strong performance between him and Elisabeth Moss, because you're really feeling like this weird tension going on, and you can't believe everything he's saying in that moment, and it just keeps you on your toes the entire time.
Yeah, I have to say that I think all the supporting cast did a pretty good job. Obviously, Elisabeth Moss really heavily is leaned on in this film, because it's mostly her interacting with an invisible force. So that's something in of itself that's pretty impressive. But I have to say the performances are all pretty solid. So when I first was hearing a lot about this movie, we didn't get to check it out until we just streamed it last weekend. I thought it was going to be a lot more graphic and a lot more, blood and violence. And it does have that in it, but I think it does it in a pretty reasonable amount. It doesn't lean too heavily on your traditional gory horror elements. It does do more of that psychological aspect. And I just think it really does well. It strikes a good balance. Because sometimes when you have psychological horrors, they can almost be a little boring to a lot of people. You don't get that flashiness to it. But this one's able to strike that balance without being too cheesy or too over the top, like more of a think piece horror film.
This movie did something really well, where there are these scenes that you knew something was probably going to happen, but the way they did it, there's a couple scenes, especially with Elisabeth Moss and her sister, and they're at a restaurant. That scene shocked me. The way that was all filmed and everything, you're just in this sincere moment of sisters talking, and then all of a sudden something happens so abrupt, and you're just like, where is this movie going?
Yeah, I do like how it subverts expectations at times. And like Noelle said, there's a lot of interesting things they can do with the fact that this guy is this omnipresent, evil, invisible person that's always around. And like I said, that helps draw that tension throughout the movie. So just the overall concept of the Invisible Man, they just took it to another level, and they did it in a way that modern audiences seem to really gravitate towards. So I love that they're able to do this, and I can't wait to see if this will spark them doing it with some of the older Universal monsters, because obviously the Mummy didn't work well, but Invisible Man seemed to do really well. I mean, I would love Creature of the Black Lagoon. I remember hearing that apparently The Shape of Water was going to be that, and it kind of molded into The Shape of Water. So, but there's a lot of other things we could, Frankenstein, Dracula, there's a lot of cool ways that we could take this.
Invisible Man is definitely good in circumstance, like you're saying, it's an old monster movie, horror movie thing, but I like it because it was very modified, it had a different feel to it, but it also had that great horror element that we grew up watching.
Yeah, it takes that original great concept that has been timeless and inserts it into a modern film. And I would like to see that more You know, I'm not always for I like new original movies, but if you can take a something really really old like that and bring it to a modern audience, I think that's great.
So I give this movie an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would. Elizabeth Moss was great in the performance, and I really enjoyed the elements throughout the film.
So if I would rate this movie, I'd actually give it an 8.5 out of 10. I'm a pretty big horror fan, so the bar was pretty high for this one, seeing the initial reviews, and I think it lived up to the hype. Did a really good blend of tension and classic horror elements, and just loved the new story being brought back.
This sums up our review of The Invisible Man. Let us know what you've been watching. Obviously, during these times, this is why we popped this one
Yeah.
on. And just let us know what you thought about the film.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you next time.
Bye.